Jesus, as our high priest, is seated at the right hand of God in heaven. Jesus is a minister in the holy place, in the true tent that was set up not by men but by God himself. We saw that the priests under Judaism stood repeatedly at their work, at their service. Year after year, the high priest went into the Holy of Holies and brought that sacrifice, knowing that the next year he would have to come and do that again. And the next high priest after him, after he had passed on, would have to come and do it after him. And there would be another generation after generation repeating these same sacrifices, simply reminding them of their sin, but never taking it away. But Jesus is not standing. Jesus has done his work. Jesus has sat down at the right hand of God. Jesus is seated. A significant difference. We know that when God took Moses up on the mountain, he revealed to Moses through a vision, or maybe he showed him the real thing, but he saw the literal, the real, the actual in heaven, the throne room of God. And he saw how the temple of God was set up around that. And God said, this is the pattern. I want you to build a tabernacle and establish it on the earth, but build it exactly after this pattern. And so we know that that tabernacle was not the reality. It was a copy of the real thing, heaven. But the same thing is true of these priests and their service that they stood and continued to perform over and over again. Just as the tabernacle was a copy of the heavenly reality, so too was the priest an earthly foreshadowing of the reality, the heavenly reality of Jesus' high priestly ministry. There was a time in history when Jesus died, when Jesus was buried, and when Jesus during that time took his own blood and went into the true Holy of Holies. Those priests entered into the earthly Holy of Holies year after year. Jesus went in once and for all and presented the ultimate sacrifice to God, his own precious blood, presented once and for all to remove the sins of man once and for all. Those Old Testament priests continued to offer and could not remove the guilt of one sin. Jesus came in with his blood, presented it to God once and for all, and all men were forgiven that would come to him, and Jesus sat down having completed his work of salvation. It's finished, just as Jesus has declared from the cross. When Jesus appeared bringing his own blood, that was the reality. All that had gone before was a shadow. All that had gone before was pointing to that day. And because of that, because this once and for all presentation of the blood of Jesus, once and for all sacrifice of Jesus on the cross, once and for all Jesus bore the wrath of God's mighty indignance towards sin on the cross. God poured his wrath out on Jesus on the cross one time. The Bible says that he crushed Jesus, that God crushed. We know the Romans put him up there. We know the Jews were involved. We know that we were all involved because of our own sin, but God said, I crushed him for your sins so that you might be saved. And Jesus has brought that blood to be presented to me, and he sat down having saved you by his work and not yours. And that's the glory of salvation through Jesus Christ that no other way can touch, because we can add nothing to what Jesus has done on the cross. We can add nothing to what Jesus did when he went into that true Holy of Holies in front of God the Father himself and gave his blood and sprinkled his blood. We can add nothing. We can do nothing. We have the only religion. And this is why it's the only way, because every other religion says, no, you do these 10 steps. You go through these 5 phases. You perform these works. You meditate and do all the work until you achieve this state. You do it. You're the way. Here's the path, and you've got to walk that path. But Jesus says there is no path. I am the path. Come through me,